For this 31st Sunday in the Ordinary Time, you just heard the wonderful conversion of Zacchaeus. There is so much to learn here from this wonderful narrative of the Gospel, and also the tone of the liturgy. We are approaching the final Sundays of the Ordinary Time, and so the liturgy inviting us to have some sort of self-reflection and kind of look into ourselves and put things right since we are ending the calendar of the year in the church. To understand and to really go into the good news of this story of Zacchaeus, it is important that we have a glimpse of his person, a background information about this person. There were studies conducted by biblical theologians and as background material about who Zacchaeus was and how did this thing happen to him. In the Beatitudes, Jesus, every line there enumerated all kinds of people whose prayers are always answered by God. The Beatitudes speak of people who are poor in spirit, the peacemakers, the merciful, the lost, and the persecuted. These are the people who are important to God, and their prayers are always answered by God. There is a line there that says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, and they will be satisfied." This is Zacchaeus, hungry and thirsting for righteousness. Let's go into the background of his person since he was a baby. Zacchaeus has always been insecure since he was a kid. He was tiny, small, and you can imagine what happens when you're in school. You are the object of jokes. If you are weak, fragile, and tiny, and then bullied by other kids, So since he was young, Zacchaeus made a vow. Nobody will take advantage of him. He is going to gain respect at all cost because he was struggling, thirsting for affirmation. He was always, taken advantage by bigger people. And so what he did was performed well in school, embraced a profession, and landed a job for the Romans. He was a tax collector. Of course, these people were disdained by the Jews because they were exacting taxes from the people to be given to the invaders and sent to Rome, to Caesar. So he was an outcast. But he didn't care. He didn't care. He did all kinds of evil things, scammed people, defrauded people. He didn't care. He had money. And he was protected by Rome, by the soldiers, so he didn't care. What he did was he built a huge mansion on the hills overlooking Jericho and a huge tract of land to display his wealth. And he thought that he is the king of the world. He will now gain respect because he is wealthy and chief tax collector, protected by Rome. But he had a problem. he had a problem. You know, at night, in that beautiful, cool mansion in the veranda, where usually normal people after a long day would sit down and relax and have a sip of cocoa, you know, relaxing, enjoying his mansion. Zacchaeus was not. He cannot sleep. He was pacing with his hands in his back, looking at the floor with perspiration in his forehead, because he remembered the people that he hurt, the families he has broken, the dreams that were lost because he took their money and defrauded them, the thousands of lives lost. People were hurt. And at night, is thinking of those people. And he was pacing, he cannot sleep. And it happens every night. And he cannot take it anymore. Surrounded by his wealth and power, a poor and miserable man who cannot rest because of guilt. Nobody can save him. Nobody can give him freedom and salvation. He is imprisoned in his mansion with the guilt that he cannot sleep at night. One day, he heard that this Jesus, who was already known, was passing by Jericho. Every time Jesus goes, thousands of people surround him. Thousands of people, all kinds of people. Imagine during that time, feeding 5,000, and then you include children, you include other people, 7,000 to 10,000 people. They were looking for cure. They were listening to him. So everywhere he goes, people were following him. And so, passing by Jericho, he heard that Jesus was coming. So he was yearning, wanted to get close to him and at least see him. But he cannot penetrate the crowd, so as usual, he climbed at the tree because he was short. He cannot see. Imagine the situation in the midst of thousands of people. This is where you will see the power of the prayer of those people mentioned in the Beatitudes. Surrounded by thousands of people, there was a force that Jesus felt. That something was pulling him. This is the power of prayer. That the prayers pulls God and prompts God to respond. Surrounded by thousands of people, there was a force pulling Jesus to the tree. See? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Jesus went to the tree, leaving the crowd of thousands. And then he said, "Hey, you there, get down. I'm staying in your house today." For the first time in his life, Zacchaeus was affirmed. The Lord went to him. For the first time in his life, somebody paid attention to him. All his life, He was disdained, he was bullied, he was mistreated. For the first time, surrounded by thousands, this great and famous man affirmed him, telling him, hey, I'm staying in your place. You're okay. I'm eating in your house today. He was affirmed. What was the reaction? What was his response? This was spontaneous, this instant transformation of the person. The first thing he did was, Lord, I will give up half of my possessions to the poor. That's a lot. Half. And if I defrauded somebody, I will pay back 4 times. He's going to lose the mansion. Probably with the small money left, the only thing he can afford is a small apartment at Brownwood. He can no longer afford the mansion. He's giving them away. He's giving all of it away. The power of the transformation of affirmation in the midst of his rottenness and guilt and sin, he was embraced by God. And he is willing, to give up. He will have nothing. But at least he can sleep now. At least he can rest now. He's free. He is free. His mansion, his wealth, and his power cannot give him peace. He is willing to exchange them. At least now, at night, he can sit down, take a deep breath, and have peace. That is the power. Those who seek for righteousness, those who hunger, believing in the power of good, God is prompted to respond. There is that force that pulls God to respond to that hunger. Many of us are seeking for that peace. Many of us are hungering. Believe in the power of good and righteousness, and God will answer your prayers. That is the homily today.